What if everything you have been told about hair loss is wrong? What if the problem isn't just your DHT allergens, but there is more to the problem? And you likely have tried oil application, scalp massage, potentially supplements, even finasteride, minoxidil, yet nothing seems to change. And then you look at other guys, and they are able to recover their hair effortlessly, while others make the treatment more and more aggressive, and they still shed even more. So is it all just about genetics? Or could it be that your follicles give you biofeedback about something else? Because the truth is that reversing hair loss naturally is not just about DHT allergens. It is about finding out and understanding why your follicles become so sensitive, and once you understand, everything changes. And if it is first time we meet, I'm Alex, and I'm someone who was struggling with the hair loss for almost a decade before I was able to regrow back my own hair. And now at the age of 31, I still have better hair than I had in my early 20s. And I'm a certificate trichologist. So today I'm going to talk about DHT and DHT sensitivity and how you can actually address it without direct DHT blocker. And the thing is that to give you a background, what happened is that I was able successfully to recover my hair at the end of 2013, but then over the years, I noticed a pattern that there was times when my hair would get better, and then they would get worse again, like I would have more shedding. And over time, of course, I found out what potential causes that could be causing that my hair follicles become more sensitive, and then I avoided those factors that could cause sensitivity, and this was the approach that I had for a long time, and it was working well. But the issue with this approach is that it gives limitations, right? So one has to be much more careful, and it also gives limitations in terms of lifestyle, in terms of diet and other factors. But what I have done now for the last 2.5 years, I have done a research and worked on personally to address the reasons why my follicles are so sensitive to those different factors. So instead of just avoiding the problems, I actually have been working on the root causes why the follicles become so sensitive. And what has happened and what I have uncovered is that there are factors that causes more DHT sensitivity and weakens the follicles. And it is something that is actually possible to address it. And what happens when you address those problems, what happens is that the hair loss progression, it slows down and even stops, but also your daily hair shedding will start to decrease, right? So your daily shed will become much less compared to before if you address DHT sensitivity or factors that is causing the follicles become weaker. So what are the factors that actually cause more DHT sensitivity? And first one is about hormonal balance. And everyone will talk about testosterone and DHT, for example, but what is most important is that your stress hormones are in balance, because those stress hormones can cause more DHT sensitivity, right? So you want to work on actually managing stress, reducing stress, and finding ways how to avoid that stress affects, for example, you in a negative way, and that again affects your other genes, right? So stress hormones is very important to address. Next one, I would say, is about diet part, and making sure that your diet itself is high in micronutrients and essential amino acids, right? Because what happens is that if you lack anything in your diet, it will weaken your follicles, which again will cause to having more DHT sensitivity, either directly or indirectly. Next one is, of course, gut health, right? Because if your gut health is not ideal, what will happen is that it's not going to be able to absorb micronutrients and building blocks that are essential for the follicles, and then you are not going to see results from treatment. And additionally, also what can happen if you are having gut problems is that it can cause, for example, more excessive oil, more excessive sebum in your scalp, or flaking, or scaling, for example, like different skin problems can occur if the gut is having issues. So gut health is also an important part. And of course, working on oxidative stress or working on mitochondrial functions, for example, is also very important, because you want to have that high output ATPs as well, because that's something that helps you to have a stronger hair, longer hair growth cycle, and better hair regrowth. And that leads to our next reason, and it is about detoxification. So you want to be sure that your body is strong, right? So you detoxify components that could be a causing issue. For example, you make sure that your body is in an alkalized state. You also potentially can look into fasting, for example, like water fasting has been very successful. For example, a lot of guys in my program, and I personally had a lot of benefits from water fasting when I was dealing with the inflammation. And I also did intermittent fasting, for example, and I still do it to some degree even today when I don't have any inflammation. And when it comes to the scalp health itself, like you want to be sure that scalp is in a healthy state, because if there are problems on the scalp, it will also weaken your follicles and cause issues for them, because the follicles will get weaker. Let's say, for example, there is a lot of excessive oil or excessive sebum in your scalp or buildups in your scalp, then what will happen is the follicles will get weaker, and they will also become much more easily affected by DHT, for example, or other gens, right? So make sure that your scalp is in great state, because this is essential for the treatment as well, especially if you're going to do a growth stimulation. And you also want to have a good oxygen flow, good circulation, for example, making sure the micronutrients and building blocks are getting to your follicles. This is also important. And if you are going to do a more natural approach to other gens in DHT, for example, then natural DHT blockers is an option you can consider. So, for example, you likely have heard about saltmetto. It's a herb that blocks DHT, like it's a mild DHT blocker. But in some cases, herbs itself can also have side effects, and it doesn't have to be just because DHT. And there is options, for example, pumpkin seed oil also is a good option for blocking DHT, or potentially also, for example, nettles, like especially nettles root, and like a reishi mushroom, for example, is also good DHT blocker, right? So adding natural DHT blocker on top of addressing DHT sensitivity makes the treatment much more solid approach to the problem you're having with the hair loss. And then when it comes to growth stimulation, like again, if you, let's say, address your hair loss progression, you address your DHT sensitivity, you address the reasons why your hair are falling out, and then working on growth stimulation itself, like if you don't want to use, for example, minoxidil, then there is options for it, right? Like again, a lot of guys are doing scalp massage, for example. But the thing with scalp massage is that yes, it can help to loosen up your scalp. It can help you to reduce, let's say, calcification if that's a problem you're having. But you also want to be sure that the follicles have a great circulation, right? So you want to be sure that all the micronutrients, like amino acids, building blocks, are getting to the follicles, right? And then you basically need to add some kind of growth stimulant on top of doing scalp massage, right? So just doing scalp massage is unlikely to be going to solve the problem you're having if you want to grow hair back again. And when it comes to growth stimulants, right? So options that could potentially mimic minoxidil could be, for example, rosemary oil, right? So essential oils such as rosemary oils that increase circulation. It could also be topical niacin, for example, like it's like a B3 vitamin, and when you apply it on the scalp, what happens, or active form of it, what happens is that it causes circulation, and then you will have redness on application area. So that's another option. And the point here is that you want to look at the hair loss in a picture of what is according there, right? So you want to see what makes sense to address on different parts of the treatment, right? So you want to be sure that the DHT sensitivity is addressed, that your hair loss progression is stopped, for example, that you are having all the necessary micronutrients, necessary building blocks to actually be able to grow hair back again. And then you also have a stimulant that helps to stimulate the follicles to be reactivated faster, and also make the treatment itself more effective, right? And this is how you address the hair loss if you are going to do it more naturally. You want to have understanding and see what each component does in terms of your situation, and then you need to connect those dots and do it in the correct sequence to address this problem. And if you are someone who struggles with this issue and you don't want to do it all yourself, then what I would recommend is just getting a hold of the Rapid Reform Workbook, which already has all the steps you need to recover the hair, because I have done all the hard work for you in this workbook, right? It has all the essentials you need. It also has the right strategies, right approach, and structure it correctly so it addresses the problems you're having in a realistic time frame with a realistic timeline so you can implement the right steps right from the beginning, and it shows exactly what you need to do to solve the hair loss problem you're having. And you can find the workbook itself below this video. There's a link for it, and you can click on it and get hold of the Rapid Reform Workbook. And once again, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think about this video. What do you think about addressing the DHT sensitivity besides blocking DHT? Like, is it something that makes sense for you? Is it something that you're going to implement to address your hair loss problem? Let me know in the comment sections and encourage your catch up there. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and see you next time.